Zach Radowski. There's not too many out there going harder. Only 26, he's an integrity partner. So listen, pay attention what he's gotta say. You ready to get paid? Let's go. This is Zach Radowski.
Zach Twardowski here with Ben Garrigan. We're going to go over a whole bunch of, Ben's time here, success, transition to doing virtual sales. But Ben, thanks for joining us today, dude. If you want to start, give everyone a little background on, what your sales careers look like up until now. And then I think if you want to share, so I think one thing that you and I have talked about a lot is that this industry gets oversold as like the easiest way to make money ever, which is simple, but it's not easy by any means. But that being said, there's a lot of upsides. There's a lot of good, bad, and everything in between. So you've done a lot of sales. You've had a lot of success in other sales industries. So if you want to talk about for a minute why you like the insurance industry and what you see like the upside of it and the downside, and then we'll kind of go through the rest of what your journey's been like since you've been here. But that'd be a good place to start.
Yeah, I think the first thing I ever did was direct TV, like out of Sam's Club. So learned how to close people there, but that's not something I would wish on anybody. But a very good skill. And then like the biggest part of sales I ever had was like home remodeling. Did that for like 5 years. And that was, it was really good. We can kind of get into the details later, but that was like a good 5-6 years. But there was kind of a cap, no matter how well you do, you're maxing out at like 150 a year. And that's easily the big difference here. But obviously anything you can do 400 or 500K your first year, it's not going to be easy. So
yeah. Right, so and then you started looking at that. You kept getting capped out at these different jobs, and like we've talked about this before too. Is like you could probably get a decent paying corporate sales job with no freedom at all, right?
Had those too.
Too, right? So and that's what I like about this. That's what stood out to me about it. Anyways, it was like Mark Mead when I was brand new said like you eat what you kill, which I'm like I like that, and that means no one's in charge of me, right? And I think that's the major upside here. So if you could go over like, dude, once you got here as a new agent, what some of the struggles were, and I think a blessing in disguise, I guess, was how 2021, 2022, everything going through, COVID, having a lot of things with the economy change, inflation, all these different things change, and then, lead availability, and really kind of forcing a lot of people to transition doing virtual sales. So if you want to start with like how it started here, success you had early on, what pitfalls you had, and then let's talk about how you transitioned to doing virtual sales now.
Yeah, I started beginning of 2021. And, it was scary transition to something where you had to buy leads, kind of more entrepreneurial. But, I had you got at least 2 or 3 weeks while you're contracting to ask a lot of questions, YouTube videos, there's tons of content. So I just ate all that up and, had my upline, had you, Easton, just asked every question I possibly could before I started so that I didn't have that weird experience buying a bunch of leads and not knowing what I was doing. So definitely take it seriously. And I had a good start. I think I started out with like 40 in my first month and 30 something or whatever it was. And, I really had a good first year. I was mostly using like 1 month old leads. Sometimes I dial till 9, sometimes I dial till, 4 o'clock, but I did it until I had enough. That was it. So, made sure I had my 30, 40 appointments. Some weeks were tough, some were, a little easier, but, and then, transitioning to, how I turned into virtual. I think that was the beginning of 2022. I just had to travel a lot, and traveling you get somewhere for 3 days, try to get leads, something goes wrong, you don't make money, your travel days. So I was like, I got to figure this out. So I, tried just one day. I was like, I'm going to try to close a few people virtually. And I think I closed like 3. And so I like really honed in on it and then started adding states as fast as I could. But it was still kind of a mess. I didn't use a CRM. I was still doing 1 month old leads, just calling people. So that was, and I can get more into how that year kind of panned out, but, still made sure I was setting up, like twice, if not 3 times as many appointments, just to make sure I was still running, enough actual like estimates of people. Yeah.
What do you think the biggest difference is between this and other sales jobs you've done? As far as like you said, there's not really there's not a big cap on it, but there is some downside, right? Like if you have cancels, chargebacks, you can have some debt.
Yeah.
You're not used to, you have to buy leads. So like, I guess, how would you compare it to other sales jobs and people who are in sales looking at it? What would you tell them? Because I think what we've transitioned to now is we don't want everybody. We want the right people.
Of course.
So, what do you think would make what makes someone, in your opinion, good and an ideal candidate for this job? And then, what would you tell people? Like, if you're scared of this, stay away. We don't want to work with you. You don't want to work with us.
Well, I'll start with my kind of more corporate experience. They do a lot of the work for you, and anything where you're not going to be, hurt by a cancel of something you sold means you're probably not making that much in commission.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely a trade-off, and being organized helps. But, when I did remodeling, we had chargebacks as well, but it worked a little differently. There's a little more of a safe stop for making sure you had some income, in the future. This, you really have to be organized with it, which is fine. And anybody that has any kind of, real sales experience and this doesn't sound good, probably the extra work just doesn't sound good to you, then, maybe it's not for you.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it was just, what the major difference is between other sales jobs you had, and like, what do you think would make someone an ideal candidate for this?
Gotcha. I had door-to-door experience, a lot of door-to-door experience, and, being able to, overturn something helps on the phones a lot, because most people don't want to say yes. It's easier to just shut someone down. So having that kind of experience is great. A lot of those door-to-door people, solar, all that. But big difference, again, you've got a lot more tasks in the day. And if you think that you can just kind of show up and just sell and walk away from it, you're going to see a lot more chargebacks. You're going to be real stressed out, not knowing what's coming. But if you're organized at the beginning of the day, organized at the end of the day, the potential is just different. Yeah.
I like the scalability. I was at a meeting with a carrier a few months back, and they pulled this stat up, and they were like, I think they said like 52% of people who they would identify as someone who needs life insurance as an adult. So like someone over 18 years old that has a dependent. They're like, only 52% of people have inadequate or any insurance at all. Mm-hmm. Which there's, however many millions of Americans, that means that don't have any insurance.
Right.
And there's all these people turning 65 every day, and new people turning 18, having kids. So like, the nice part about it, I think, is that the client base will never go away. It'll never not be a need. And there's a lot of companies that have tried to go direct to consumer, and they can't figure it out, right? Even like Ethos is a good example. We partner with them, we work with them, but their initial model and their main model, I guess, was still probably direct to consumer now, but we partnered with them because they wanted more distribution, because they can't scale it enough just by going direct to consumer, Right. And it's such a personalized sale where you're talking about beneficiaries, and if you pass away, like that, they'll always will need agents for it, right?
100%,
so,
yeah.
For me, that's what I always looked at. I'm like, how scalable is this? And it's incredibly scalable, because just the pure amount of people that don't have insurance that do need it, right?
Yeah, and to that point, you start out, you sell final expense,
Mm-hmm.
help people out with the basic stuff. I'd say it's hard to be in this business for 3 years, maybe less, and not get into, there's just so much potential. Annuities, that call, covered it, but annuities, universal life. You can get into where you're, closing a few sales a year for, 50, 100,000 in commission. That's something that's scalable. That's potential. That's not getting kind of stuck doing one thing.
Right.
Yeah. Big opportunity.
And you build up the building blocks, you learn basic sales stuff, then you can start getting into these bigger ticket items that can act like a massive bonus. And we had a call where Sean Ruggiero went over, the different quadrants and, how IULs, annuities work, and adding that stuff on. But he was saying the average commission on a annuity sales is $13,000. Average commission on an IUL sale is $3,000. Annuity sale is $13,000. So he's like, if you could do, if you could get it to where you even did one annuity sale a quarter, one IUL a month, like that's a way to be a much more profitable agent without having to add anything extra to that, right? Anything extra as far as lead costs, marketing costs, anything like that.
Yeah, and the difference, all you have to do for those is a little education at the end of the day. And
right.
You're more comfortable asking for, 401k, whatever it is.
You were doing in the field, like, kneecap to kneecap, old school, in-home sales for a long time, right?
Yeah.
And then transition to doing virtual sales now. And I think, leads is a big part of that, but I'd love you to cover kind of schedule first, because I think what I've heard, which is weird, is people are like, oh, like, and I've seen this marketed. People are like, oh, you can sit in your pajamas at home and sell insurance, and like that's kind of weird way to position it, because that's not really how it is, right? You don't get to just sit around on your couch and kick your feet up, and I don't know if you're above 18 years old, probably shouldn't wear pajamas.
Not if I want to get something done.
Yeah.
No.
But anyway, so can you talk about what, like, that's like the fairy tale version. What does it really look like to be a successful, virtual agent?
I've got ADD, but, it helps me to have some place that's, you know, if you have to work in your bedroom, I've done that too, but some part of the house that's kind of dedicated to it, no distractions, very easy to, you know, just get up and walk away. No one's looking at you. But I personally have a, you know, little office now, and I just kind of make sure I'm in there, you know, looking at emails, whatever it is, by like 7:30 at the latest. Also with virtual, you can sell across time zones, so that gives you a lot more opportunity. But you know, I only give myself about an hour, 2-hour break in the middle of the day for, you know, both sanity, get some errands done, lunch, whatever it is. But then, you know, 2 4-hour chunks on each side of that. If you actually work that whole time, it's pretty hard not to, you know, walk into the same ones you would have in the field.
Yeah, and in the field, so like when I was in the field, my thing was I'm going to set 8 appointments per day, like good, solid appointments, right? And virtual sales, you're not setting appointments, because if you set them virtually, like, it's just, there's too many factors that go into it, right? So you do predominantly one call closes. So what are good metrics for people to follow for like the equivalent of 8 appointments per day is what on the virtual side?
Minimum 15. I'd say 15 to 20, and I know that might sound crazy, but it's very easy to get a commit over the phone. And I only set when I have to, you know, and I call it running a miniature appointment before. A miniature appointment, I also don't give them the information they want until we're talking to a spouse or until they're in a buying situation, I guess. But I'll get all the information from them, make an impression. That's the big one. You're just a voice on the other side of the phone, you know, when you're doing virtual. So you take that 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever they'll give you, you know, and kind of weed out if they're serious about it or not, and be memorable. And then they still might not pick up the phone the first time, but then we can kind of roll into how we use CRMs to, you know, be more efficient. But yeah, if you're just setting, which I don't recommend, 15 minimum.
If you're just doing one call closes, how many presentations should agents that are full-time, you know, be looking to do per day, would you say?
I think if you can do 7, you know, presentations in a day, and even if 2 of those are, you know, quick presentations, you're going to be able to pull out minimum, you know, 1 or 2. But hopefully, 3 a day is, you know, hopefully, you know, what you can get. Of course, no one's. Everybody has a bad day, but yeah,
everyone has good and bad days. But if you can get 7 presentations a day, and like worst case numbers, if you only close 1 of those per day, 5 days a week, you're doing well as an agent, right? And if you can get it to 2, right, then you're really profitable. If you get to 3, then you're crushing it, right?
Very much, yeah.
All right. So what systems and processes and everything like that do people need to have in place to, you know, do well? And I think that was part of the issue we had, is we're like, all right, let's do virtual sales, and no one had like everything. We were figuring it out as we went, which is kind of cool. This is still like basically a startup at this point, right? We're just figuring stuff out as we go. Like, I think people sometimes think like you're recruiting people, or we are. It's like, you have all the answers. Like, dude, we're still figuring it out too. So, but you've definitely locked this part in now after, you know, it's a lot of trial and error and a lot of hard work. So what are some systems people need to have in place to do well at virtual sales?
CRM, absolutely. Some sort of a CRM, email, text. Everyone's different, you know. Some people are 70, don't know how to open their text messaging app, but still check their email religiously, Facebook, whatever. So having multiple points of contact for people, and then anybody can think back to the last time they had to get an oil change or go to the dentist, and, you know, that urge to change that appointment, because you just, you know, like, why not later? Everybody's going to have that, and, you know, especially over telesales, people have the mentality that they can just do it tomorrow, and you can't avoid that, but you can give people the best opportunity to not forget about it and to stay kind of in their mind without, you know, upsetting them.
Okay. And then what about like automated dialing software, or some kind of outbound, something that gives you some inbound people that are reaching out to you?
Absolutely. So, you know, there's multiple CRMs that'll do it, but, you know, something that's going to shoot out a text message to let people know that you're either going to call or they need to call you, or both, you know, is going to allow people to call you at their convenience, or if, you know, pops up on their phone, they're curious, they'll answer, but that's not going to hurt you to have, you know, the inbound. So that's, a big function.
Yeah. Even just sending out the text ahead of time makes it go from where your call might say spam likely to where it says maybe Ben, right?
Absolutely. I
noticed that my wife was looking at a new car, and then put my number in a bunch of them, and they all texted me first and then called, and it says maybe, you know, this deal. I'm like, God, I'm getting blown up now, but they do the same thing to make sure that it doesn't show up as spam, and so I'm, you know, at least tempted to answer the phone call, right? All right, and then the other thing you started doing too, you know, as you're building a team, and we can get into your thoughts on, you know, how you're doing that the right way and what you're doing now, but you also started generating some of your own leads. So if you want to talk to that about what you're doing and what you're doing for the people that are on your team specifically, and how you're going to be able to scale that, I think that'd be cool for people that are interested in working with you to kind of see how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still learning, but in general, if you're marketing your own leads or whatever, picking a group of people to kind of speak to, and whether it's healthcare, it could be veterans, it could be public transit, where it really doesn't matter as long as you can kind of target market that. And you're going to spend a little time at the beginning figuring out what to do, and there's no shortage of people on LinkedIn that'll maybe teach you to do it if it's a route you want to go down. But I think whether you do your own leads, get them from somewhere else, just have a regular lead buying system where you're not curious where they're going to come from the next day, or you wake up and your mortgage mailers didn't come in and you're just sitting there not doing anything. So multiple streams, even if you're getting your own, have some 1 month to just sit there and be able to work that full 8 hours. Yeah, and it'll work out. But yeah, you can definitely generate your own leads these days. Got
it. And then for people that are interested in working with you specifically, you're generating your own leads. You figured out a way to make exclusive leads, and you're allowing people to either go on like a reduced comp lead plan where you provide leads for free for them, or they can buy leads at cost, basically, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't take too much credit for doing it, but found someone to work with, to do it, which is maybe an easier thing for people to do. But yeah, and I guess to answer that, some people are very comfortable buying leads. Some people have the experience where they'll come in and take it seriously enough to not waste time. But putting someone in a position that not giving them tons of training and then throwing leads at them, 2 weeks of spending $1,000 or $1,500 without the success can kind of hurt. So having a real conversation with people about what level they're at and what they're going to be able to do, and then don't put yourself out of business buying people leads, but put yourself in a position to give that opportunity, because there are some great people that, maybe can't buy leads right now. But if you give them, 3 weeks, and that also lets you kind of help them have a more rigid schedule. People that buy their own leads are kind of on I'll work when I want to, which not everybody should have that freedom in the first 2 months of learning how to do a job for the first time.
I think if you asked everyone, like, what's the biggest reason agents fail, is just because they're not super good at being self-employed in the beginning. And that's something that you have to learn how to do and be able to, hold yourself accountable to when you don't have a boss that's breathing on your neck, right? So going to kind of the beginning where you talked about your sales background and your time here, and now you're starting to build a team and, recruit some high caliber salespeople. I'd love to hear your thoughts on, how you're going to try to build your own team, right? Like what you're doing, and what things you've taken from other sales jobs and opportunities you've had to, really be able to build this the way you want to build it, and what you're looking for in people that may be watching this.
Yeah, I had, 5-6 years of, corporate and sort of corporate sales experience with great management structure, not an option to show up and work, not an option to cut out early, and not an option to not even going on Saturdays sometimes. As much as it sucked, that's what, making 6 figures looks like. And, just, if you want that, that's the expectation. So, I do have a conversation with people about what, they're expecting, what level of entrepreneurial, genes they have. And if people, want it but don't have it, just say you're going to be asking a lot of questions at first. If you're not, don't expect it to just happen. Also, as I recruited for 2 years and didn't have the most success because I didn't know how to train people, and I don't think it's fair to even put people in that kind of a position. So now, we're very selective about who we hire. If we're, on a second or third interview with you, we're taking you seriously. You've taken us seriously. And does not hurt to have that opportunity to, pay for leads for people, but took a few months to put myself in that position. So I think everybody should probably learn things in their steps and stack the skills the way that they're supposed to. And if 3 months, 2-3 months of you, selling plenty and working all day, every day, and, really like defining that gives you, I think, the ability to show someone else how to do it, but, can't do those out of order.
Yeah, for sure. And so like your dad's a attorney, right? My dad's a doctor. It's like if people want to get paid like a professional like that, I think it's a good exercise to look at what people who do jobs like that have to do to be able to make what they make, right? Yeah. And I think about that all the time with my dad, and I don't know. I'm sure your story is similar, but he left really early every day, worked on Saturdays for at least half days, like was always gone working. And even to get to the place where he could start working, had to go through medical school, residency, all this stuff. And I think people, to do well in this, if they can put even like a fraction of the amount of effort that people who have professional careers like that have into doing this, then they can see some of the same level of success, right? But it's not, you can't just kind of limp in and not put any effort in and not study it like it's going to be your career, right?
100%. My dad even figured out how to work from home. So.
He did. Yeah, absolutely.
That's where I got it.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, if anyone is watching this, wants to work with you, what's the best way to get a hold of you and your team, set up an interview, and see if they'd be a good fit to work with you?
I can leave our my recruiter's email, absolutely, and oh shoot, I'll have to find that while we're talking. And then Instagram, Smart Life Agency, as well, and Facebook, Smart Life Agency, yeah. And then leave my contact information as well.
Yeah, we'll put your contact on the wherever we're streaming this from. So,
Okay,
dude, I appreciate you coming in. Thank you for everything you're doing for helping the team out, and really helping build out the